I'm from the Valley. I am from Tarzana. I was born and raised. And I distinctly remember when I first heard this song. It was actually the first time that I ever like knew what the Valley was, like had a concept of that's where I live. My mom picked me up from carpool and she was cracking up. It was on, I think, Kiss FM or KIQQ. And she was like, this song is about where we live. It's hilarious. And I was listening to it going, even at that age, going, it sounds like they're making fun of us, but I liked it. And, you know, the phenomenon went from there.
I remember the first time I heard it too. I was in the car, also going to school. I mean, it was a carpool situation and it was on K-Rock. And I remember hearing it on the radio for the first time and I was like, that's crazy. And then the car, my mother was driving and the car was swarmed by some friends I knew who also had heard it on the drive to school and some people I didn't know. And so that was a fun experience to also experience it as a radio listener.
Well, I definitely want to get into the K-Rock stuff because, again, having grown up in LA, K-Rock means a lot to me. And I know they're the station that like made all this happen. They're the one that got the song its first radio play. But I do want to start at the beginning with how you know, got your dad to do this song, because I think it's like a really cute story that like this whole thing kind of started off as like a father-daughter bonding experience that came from like your request, like a little note you sent him or something.
Yeah, I think so. I must have been about, I think I was 13 and I was pretty frustrated with the way the house was run. My father was touring all the time and sometimes eight months out of the year. So that's a long time to go without seeing the steady parental figure in the house. He never raised his voice. He was so funny. He was so smart, so talented, so playful, very improvisational. And so to miss that kind of stability and that grounding was really just not great, to just be stuck with a mom who is really missing him as well, and to, as the oldest kid, to have to pick up the slack and help care for my younger siblings. Dweezil was 2 years younger, Amit was 7 years younger, Diva was 12 years younger. So when I was 13, Diva was just a baby, so she was calling me Mommy Moon, and so I had a lot of responsibility, and I was like, get back here, you take care of your family. And then when he was home, he would sleep during the day and work at night. So then there were restrictions on our own expression and having to be quiet in the house, and then the world was always revolving around him. So that's the backdrop there. And so yeah, I said, okay, it seems to me the place you spend most of your time when you're here is in the studio. So why don't we work together? So I wrote a note and I said, it's come to my attention, something of the sort that would be great if you would look for an opportunity where we could work together. If that's the only way I'm going to get to spend time with you, then let's work together. You can contact my people, meaning Gail, just call upstairs, and my manager, will arrange it. And
oh my God.
And so I think a couple of months went by, maybe 1 or 2 months. I don't really remember. But then he woke me up on a school night. So it wasn't great timing for me, but you gotta leap. If you make the request and then somebody comes through, then I didn't know I could say, actually, can you come back when it's better for me? So
what time was it? Wasn't it like super late or something?
I don't know, 2 a.m. on a school night. So I went downstairs and we had a vocal booth in the house, and so I went to the vocal booth and I had the headphones on and I was listening to the bass, the track with just drums and bass and the melody there, and then he had the chorus already on the track, and then he just said, just improvise in between the choruses. And so I had done this voice that I called this Val speak voice, or the surfer dude voice, and it was a voice I had picked up going to school in the Valley, and it was a kind of a just something that made him laugh. And so I would just start talking, and then after I'd get through the song once, he'd then say, okay, this time talk about how annoying it is to clean the cat box. And so then I would talk about that, and then we'd go back and forth with some improvisations. We'd use dialogue that I'd heard, or he'd say, use these words, and we made up new lingo to play around with. It just made us laugh, and I didn't think anything of it. It was just a bonding time with my dad.
And I'm shocked that it was, sorry to interrupt, but I'm shocked that it was improvised. Is there stuff that you didn't use? Are there outtakes? Is there a longer remix of like, because I think it's like 3 verses. There's the cat box, there's the nails, there's the Mr. Bufu, there's a lot. There's a S&M, Leather Teddy. There's like 5 talking vignettes. Yeah. Is there anything you didn't use, or that's in the can somewhere?
That I hadn't. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that was left on the floor there while he was editing it. But it wasn't until recently that I heard that from Ahmet. He said that there's some stuff you should hear. There's some outtake stuff that didn't get used, and then Universal had contacted me to say that they had used some of the stuff I hadn't heard before for some other kind of a remix. So I know that there is stuff that exists. I haven't heard it in its entirety, but it would be fun, I think, to just to hear it just for the memory.
So
of it.
You said, this was sort of, I don't know what school you went to, where you said you went to school in the Valley.
I went to a private school called Oakwood. It was a college preparatory school. It was where fancy families sent their kids at the time. So, but it was also a super hippie school, because you'd go to the classes and you didn't have to wear your shoes to class, and you called the teachers by their first name. And we had an apple machine in the courtyard. We can get a green or red apple for 25 cents instead of a soda pop or something. It was a Pippin or a Red Delicious instead.
Did you know girls, like, Frank wanted you to make fun of girls you knew? Did you know, or kids you knew? Did you know kids that like actually really talked like Andrea?
I don't know that my father was wanting me to make fun of anybody. I think he was just trying to create, I mean, I feel like he would kind of like zero in on an archetype and a kind of, they were mini worlds you were dropped into. So they were little journeys unto themselves. And so I think that voice first made him laugh, and it delighted him, and that was an amalgamation of the different types of kids that I went to school with for the first time. I mean, I hadn't known about the Valley prior to that. We lived in Laurel Canyon. There were no sidewalks. You didn't know you had a neighbor until some parent or you were old enough to drive. Then you'd be like, where do you live? It turns out they lived 3 doors down. But it was a kind of a I was pretty isolated up there. So, and our house was like the Winchester house, the mystery house, where my mother had the house under construction 6 days a week. So there was always something being constructed, and part Robinson Crusoe, part just this wild house that was it was a lot of fun. People really liked coming to that house. So that's where I was most of the time. And so then when I went to school, that was my first exposure to different kinds of families that really lived differently than we did. So when I went to visit, say, a friend's house, and I saw that people ate dinner at the same time at a table upright with silverware, or they took hot tubs together, or they rode bicycles together like a family, or they let us take 2 bicycles and ride up the street. Maybe you were at the Thinnery at one point. Did you ever go to the Thinnery in Encino? It was a place where you get chocolate slushy ice drinks that were, I think, not very many calories, because everybody dieting was trending at the time. Oh, yeah. I think Scampi had just come onto the scene, and Pasta Primavera and Benihanas. These were the fancy.
Did you spend time at the Galleria? I got to ask, because that's where I went on my first date.
So the Galleria, of course, was a staple. That was, first of all, it was when you took the bus in the valley, you'd stop at the Galleria, and then you'd switch buses to get to the beach. So
Or Westwood, yeah.
exactly. And so yeah, I love people watching, and that's what I was trying to say. So when I would go to school with these kids, I'd go to bar and bat mitzvahs, and I'd get to see what I considered normal or stable families were like, and it was exotic to me. So if I saw people with preppy shirts or loafers with no socks, I was like, oh my God, this is so exciting. So going to the Galleria and seeing that culture on display, people, whatever, teenagers that were employed, that was already crazy to me.
Well, I'm wondering what inspired some of the specific scenarios. I was listing them a minute ago. Some of them were a little bit adult, like, the S&M, oh, hurt me. You were 13 or 14 years old. Were you hearing, like, are these stories you heard around the Oakwood campus or at the Galleria, or did they just come from your imagination?
No, I think the S&M stuff, I think that's a product of growing up in a hypersexual home, and seeing from the time I was little, I always joke and say people were in the nude making candles near my playthings. And we had a family, not a portrait, there was a portrait in the family home of like kind of an orgy scene. There were Zippy the Pinhead cartoon comics laying around, and the Viper, and Wee and Hustler, and there was a lot of stuff around vibrators. I had the bedroom next to my parents and heard sex. I knew my dad messed around on my mother. It was, I've got many journals where I've got drawings that are, it's naked people chained up and having sex. It's stuff that you shouldn't be drawing at age 8, 9, and 10, but that was my environment. So that's the stuff I was exposed to. And so I think it was, again, a combination of just when you tap into a kind of a character voice and you let that character speak. I mean, I do it now I'm a writer as an adult. And so if you kind of like follow the tangent that the character you inhabit is thinking about. And so that's what that character wanted to be talking about. And, but again, I think the thing that people don't realize is that was me having private time with my father in a playful, theatrical, improvisational way. And I didn't filter anything. I didn't edit. I didn't censor. I just was trying to make my dad laugh. That was my objective. And so for me, having it then appear on an album was a kind of exposure and embarrassment and betrayal for me. I wasn't thinking about we're making a product. I was thinking I'm spending time with my father. And so I thought, oh no, these people are going to get their feelings hurt. My teacher's going to get his feelings hurt. I thought we were going to get sued. I thought a truant officer was going to come and take me away. Like it was very stressful for me. I didn't think about it in terms of, oh, I'm launching my career. I just thought, oh no, who are we going to get in trouble with? Now there was a lot of legal stuff growing up. And so I had, it really put me into a state of anxiety. Plus I was going through puberty, so my skin wasn't great. So it's the last thing I want to do was have any focus on myself. And
wow. And it was a focus that you obviously couldn't have predicted. I had no idea about this. So what did your dad tell you he was going to put it out, or at that moment where you heard it on K-Rock, was that the moment where you found out? Or
yeah, that I mean, he had said that he was going to put it on the album, but I didn't even understand what that meant. He didn't have sales, that we were not, it was like, okay, it was yet another thing that would be heard by specifically the fans. And I had no idea how he had pieced the whole thing together. And so it was definitely a surprise.
Well, the biggest surprise is obviously, as you said, although he is a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame acclaimed influential artist, he was never commercially, he was not a radio artist. He was not, like you said, the sales. So then he puts out Valley Girl, and it's his biggest hit. It's his only top 40 hit. It not only is a hit with you on Solid Gold, epically lip syncing to it, but like it's nominated for a Grammy. And then it has this whole phenomenon. There's a movie, there's the Valley Girls Guide to Life, there's makeup lines, fashion lines, people talking like you, like, and all the anxiety that you already were having must have been so exacerbated when it became this like absolute phenomenon that like spawned basically an industry. Like there are linguistic classes about how to talk like Andrea, like your character. So like, how did you deal with that?
To parse it out a little bit, for the first thing was my father always wanted to have commercial success. It just so happened it didn't happen until that song. And then that song came out at a time when he was already scheduled to go on a European tour. And so the American press that suddenly was needed to be done was left for me to do. And that was extremely stressful as a teenager, just trying to get through 9th grade or something. And so I remember that. And then a lot of the interviews, they only wanted to interview me. And so then there was this strange dynamic between me and my father where is it an accident that when I step in, we have a success, or am I just an instrument that he's using as a tool? Then there's that conversation. I like to think that I played a big part in why it was successful, and that there's something appealing about the parts that I came up with. But because it was I think the only like Randy Newman song, Short People or something, he had a similar thing happen where he's got this body of work, and then Short People's the breakout song. And so I think it was to be put into like a nostalgia box or a one-hit wonder box, or but at the same time it's making enough money that my father could actually take some time to do other things that he was interested in, more composition, more composing, rather, more orchestral stuff. And so to put away a little bit of money so you could, as an independent artist, you want to be able to make the stuff you want to make without having to think about trying to earn money with it. And so I think we'd already as a family kind of adapted to the ebbs and flows of how success moves when it's when it's not really that available to you. So when you get this influx of an income, then it changes a lot. So when we had more money, then it just changed the dynamic in the house. It just got really I think one of the craziest stories at one point was, or maybe this happened later, my mother bought a spiral staircase for like $200,000 or something, and then forgot to pick it up, things of this nature. And then it was resold, where you're just like, you shouldn't have that kind of money to not remember to pick up your $200,000 spiral staircase. Anyway, that might've happened a little bit later, but anyway, just some funny asides when there's a lot of money and it changes the family dynamic.
So in terms of the dynamic with you and Frank, was there any kind of resentment that, like, like you said, that his hit was something that where you were kind of the face of it, or his hit was kind of this, I guess, what some people would call a novelty song? Or were you resentful of the fact that
I think it bonded my father and I in a way that my mother was resentful of, because now I'm in photographs with my father. I'm paired with him. He's excited to keep working with me. We did another thing called Bunny Bunny Bunny, this weird video thing that super fans know about. I was on a few other albums. He'd asked me to do stuff. I went on Letterman with him, and we did a bunch of talk shows, and we traveled together here and there. And so I think that I got to be, and then I got some acting jobs from the exposure, and that's really where I had wanted to put my time and energy. And so then I was a working showbiz person. So he and I were the two showbiz people in the house. And so then it created a dynamic within the family. I was never wanting any of the fame part of it, but I wanted to be, I admired my father, so I wanted to be a working artist like my father. So that, I think it changed. Yeah, it just changed how the structure of the family, I think, operated in some ways.
And then in terms of, you were talking about the anxiety you had when this song was unleashed into the world and became this kind of unprecedented success for Frank. You know, how did you deal with that? Like I said, became this, I don't know if you were surprised at the phenomenon it became. I think maybe some people didn't kind of get the satire of the song, that everyone wanted to like dress and talk like a Valley girl or whatever. Like, and also you mentioned that you were worried that there'd be backlash at your school. Can you just tell me about all the aftermath of how you processed that when the song blew up?
Well, I just thought my teacher would have his feelings hurt because I was talking about, yeah, I was talking about how, I don't know how to even talk about it. I, well, a lot of my father was angry about the businesses that respond outside of the song, because he didn't have the revenue from those other splintered versions of the song. And I had a lot of people getting hired to do the voiceovers in their cities or their states. And so I had a lot of people writing to me or approaching me in person and saying, oh, because of you, I bought a farm because I was the voice of the Valley girl in Chicago, or I was the voice of the Valley girl in Texas. Or so there were a lot of benefits that people experienced that I think that my father felt that should have come to him, that went to other people. And but I'm just a sensitive person. I just don't like people to get their feelings hurt or be exposed to stuff if they didn't ask for the exposure too. So I just, like I said, I was just worried about this one girl in particular who I really kind of, who inspired the song the most for me. And then my teacher, those two, I had worry about their, about them getting their feelings hurt or being exposed to attention, unwanted attention, the way I felt I had this unwanted attention on me. It's one thing if you want to tell your own story or you want to go make your own living on your own merits, but it's another thing to have somebody, I don't know, just talk about you, and then it becomes a thing. I mean, we live in a crazy world now. People do way worse stuff now than any of that then. But at that time, I think it wasn't up to me. I was a kid at the mercy of a creative process.
Did your teacher in particular ever confront you or acknowledge that he was the guy in the song, the teacher in the song?
No.
I did. I admit, I actually just did karaoke last weekend, and I did Valley Girl because I was like prepping mentally for this. And when I got to that verse, I was like, oh, like I hadn't really heard seen the words on a karaoke screen. I'm like, oh, this didn't age that well. No offense, because obviously at the time I thought nothing of it. But like, are there things about the song that you look back on, you're like, don't feel totally comfortable with that?
What do you think didn't age well? What's something that didn't age well?
The Mr. Bufu verse, maybe a little bit. Just that, actually nothing else. But I was actually doing the karaoke in front of an 11-year-old, and I was like, hurt me, I am sure S. And I'm like, oh, I hope she doesn't know what this means. You know,
right.
I don't think she did. But yeah, is there anything in general about the song that you would change if you could? Because we're celebrating it 40 years later.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, what I think about it now is that at that time, I think the only other father-daughter combo that was out there was Debbie Boone and Debbie and Pat, and brother and sisters were the Osmonds and maybe the Cassidys, and I'm trying to think of
Jacksons, I guess.
Yeah, so like the idea that you could get excited about a family is something that I really treasure about the experience. And I think, yeah, Yeah, the sensitivity about the topic. I mean, I think about the Bad News Bears, for example. That movie was just such a classic film, and you couldn't make a movie like that. You couldn't make a song, I guess, like this unless you're gonna maybe just take your chances and do hardcore rap or something. I don't really know. It's but that's just me as now as a parent going, that would hurt my feelings a lot, or that would hurt my kids' feelings, or that would hurt my friends' feelings. So I think yeah, that part of the song, I mean, it's a really hard song to sing also.
I
So
noticed that. I found that out at
right.
karaoke.
So
it was not easy.
that was also a time when, as you said, lip syncing was how you would promote something. I mean, what a weird, random way to be working with material. That's just it's extremely strange. So that was really challenging. So I laugh when people want to do it now.
What are your memories of that Solid Gold performance? Because that, if you look on YouTube and you look up Valley Girl, that's actually like because I guess there was no official music video ever made for it. That is the first.
Yeah, my dream would be to get Paul Thomas Anderson to do a video. Maybe his wife could play a Val today. But yeah, at the time videos were just getting started. My father was not in that video mindset, and so that particular performance was teen magazines in my hand with all of the lyrics in large font, so I could just like flip open the magazine, glance down, try to say some of the lyrics into the camera that's pointed at me, and then move to another box where some dancers are chewing gum and doing their moves, and then pick up another teen magazine and hope that I can remember something. It was just new to me, blocking and wearing high heel shoes for the first time. I got to get some special white pumps and for that performance, and I still have that outfit today, and now it's fun that the fashion comes back and I can still fit into it and march around with it. It makes me laugh.
Yeah, the Solid Gold dancers too, and I'm sorry, I just was gonna say
No,
the
go
Solid
ahead.
Gold dancers were all like dressed like Valley Girls. It was the best.
Yeah, that was really fun. And then I think my favorite other appearance was getting to do Merv Griffin. He wasn't there that night that I did that show, but Christopher Atkins from Blue Lagoon was on, and I mean, come on, that was exciting to be on the same show with Christopher Atkins. But yeah, so what I've done to celebrate Valley Girl for the 40th is I have a little tiny tea company, and I made my tea is called this batch is totally Assam tea. So that's how I'm celebrating my 40 years of remembering.
It's funny because there's a line about clean the cat box, and my cat keeps like walking up.
I'm watching your
clean
cat.
the cat box. Since we're talking about landmarks with the song and like father-daughter experiences, did you go to the Grammys with Frank? Because I looked, and as I mentioned, it was nominated for Best Rock Performance by a Duo or Group, and I just want to say that you were robbed. Survivor, Eye of the Tiger, while a good song, you were up. That's what won. You were also up against Asia, the Jay Giles Band, and Kenny Loggins featuring Steve Perry, and then there's you and Frank Zappa, Moon and Frank Zappa doing Valley Girl. I feel that you should have been the outlier that was like the surprise win. Did you go?
Well, I went. He did not go. I got to meet the Go-Go's. That was exciting. And then I'm trying to think. Yeah, then we did the American Music Awards and some other stuff. Yeah, it was again a very strange time, because I to be a teenager now. I mean, my big concern was, do I twist my sweatpants towards my ankle or flash dance sweatshirt? How much do you cut to get the off the shoulder look? I wasn't thinking about, oh, this is my professional beginning here.
Did you wear like twisted sweatpants to the Grammys?
No, I dressed up. My mother made my dress for the American Music Awards, and for the Grammys, or maybe it was the other way around, I wore pink and brown. So I had a lot of ruffles, the extreme ruffles. I looked like a weird chocolate cupcake.
That is amazing. So did you have a speech prepared?
I did not have a speech prepared. No. I mean, again, looking back at that character, I think what's fun about Valley Girl that I hope that new audiences can appreciate, and older audiences as well, was that the archetype of Val is, it is such a lighthearted, again, unfiltered voice examining the world. So I think it's really fun to get into that mindset and become that kind of a character, looking at the world with that. I mean, even the Boofu stuff, I'm just from the mind of a Val, you're just like, that's what they're into, and I'm into this thing, and that's what they're into. So that it's the perspective to be able to talk about uncomfortable things in a way that's just like, that's not for me, but this thing is. I think there's that lightness is the thing that people are drawn to, which is why I think that character continues to appear in cartoons and in movies and on radio and in all the forms. And some of my favorite current Vals, the daughter on Schitt's Creek, I mean, that's probably my favorite iteration of that mindset. Hysterical. I can't think of that actress's name, but she's a goddamn genius. Where you hear it, and
the Californians on Saturday Night Live.
Right. So
Clueless, the movie, definitely. And Heather's probably.
It's just fun to hear how it just keeps morphing for the times, because there's always going to be groups of people that have their finger on a pulse of something that they like. But again, it's that lighthearted, almost not shallow, but just there's something about, like, even when I do the voice or think about that character, my posture changes, because there's something about it that is kind of cocky appreciation for their own interests. and it's a funny, again, when I first went to bar and bat mitzvahs and I saw this one girl who really was just the epitome of this kind of an idea, I just was so enchanted with her lyrical ability to move from one friend group to another friend group. There seemed to be no boundaries between where she could place herself. And so if I think about it like an archetype, and I'm thinking about somebody who is ultimately free, and that it's a lightness about a freedom of it's freedom from heaviness. It's just, so I think there'll always be some kind of appeal if there's some part of you that longs to not carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. So there's if we really examine a whole psyche, then we all have these kind of parts inside of us. And so I think that's one that's, I think, always needed, especially during difficult times. And I think, I mean, I think that's why it's a fun character that keeps appearing.
Absolutely. So to sort of wrap with, what I was talking about in the beginning, when we were talking about, how you improv this, like you were talking about how you were sort of making up, like, I didn't know a lot of people who said things like grody to the max or gag me with a spoon. Did you make up those things, or did you hear like this girl you were talking about say stuff like that?
Grody to the max, I probably overheard. Gag me with a spoon, no. We made that up.
Wow.
I'm trying to think. I mean, again, I'd love to go back and listen to all the things that were said, because we were just having a laugh about what if those were popular things to say. So in some ways it's science fiction.
I mean, gag me with a spoon became something people said, didn't grody, bitchin', all of those things.
Bag your face. I think bag your face was partially a nod to the unknown comic at the time who was
Gong Show.
Yeah, who was making the talk show circuits. It was a man who literally did comedy with a brown paper bag over his head. And so I think that was my dad's offering of bag your face, because we'd laughed about that guy on the Gong Show.
Amazing. So I guess I'll wrap up by saying, I sort of at the beginning said that I had perceived this song as sort of making fun of the Valley or making fun of Valley girls, but you don't see it as that, or that's not how it should be. That's not how it was intended or how it should be perceived in your opinion.
Well, I can only speak for myself, and I can only say that I was enchanted by the lyrical nature of this particular type of girl who, I mean, I would have loved to have their nervous systems, to just feel that I could just shop and not worry about the stresses of being, say, the eldest child, also helping to raise younger siblings. So for me to be in that fantasy moment of what it would be like to just have that kind of confidence and freedom, it was just something, again, my goal is to make my dad laugh. Outside of that, whatever he had envisioned for it, that that would have been, have to read his old interviews to see what that was for him. But for me, it was a chance to spend time with my father and to make him laugh.
Well, mission accomplished. And 40 years later, are you glad that he did put it out and it reached this wider audience and you're still talking about it now?
I mean, it's weird. It's a weird, I have to say, am I glad? I'm not even thinking glad, not glad. I'm just thinking it is a weird thing that just keeps going, I guess. But I feel happy that I got to spend that time, and that it sparked my creativity, that it sparked my desire to observe the world and to stay current with, I'm a big fan of contemporary art and making art of the time, and whether that's writing or music or podcasting. I'm interested in how people think in the time that we're like. Context is interesting to me. So and so it's just fun to just know that opened a door for me to go deeper inside my own creativity.
Well, I'm so glad it did. So I'll wrap up by asking, obviously you have quite a story, quite a family story. We only sort of scratched the surface of it in context of talking about Valley Girl. Don't you have a book coming out of your own?
I am working on a memoir at the moment, and I have one book that's out already, a few anthologies I'm parts of, but this will be my nonfiction journey. But it's funny because writing is, even if you're writing fiction, you are in it. So I think honestly, in some ways, fiction is weirder than nonfiction, because it's the stuff that you're thinking about. Whereas if you're telling your own story, then you're telling how you've reframed it. And but again, it's all storytelling, I think, is how we can make sense of our world and our lives, and we can always change a story. So if you're driving and you hit 2 red lights, is it a story of getting stuck, or is it a story of what happens while you're stopped at the light? Or if you hit green lights, it could be the same day. What are you putting your attention on? The green lights, the red lights, a combination, and then what are you doing with that information? It's just a fun way to think about things.
Absolutely. I cannot wait to read that book. In the meantime, I loved hearing the story of Valley Girl. Is there any thing you want to say to sum up the song's legacy?
No, but if I hurt my teacher's feelings, or if I hurt the girl who inspired the song, I did sincerely apologize, and I hope it brought you joy and connection and closer to your own creativity. And you can just know that I'm thinking about you all still today.
Aw, that's awesome. That's a great way to end this. Thank you so much, Moon. It was a pleasure meeting you formally, and maybe I'll see you at a Pamela party or event sometime.
Thanks for your time, Lyndsey.
Thank you for yours.
I hope this was fun for you and for the listeners and viewers.
Absolutely was. I really appreciate your time and everything you said.
Thank you.